Hey everyone, this is Disc Junkie and welcome back to Secondhand Sickness. So in today's video we are back at the reviewing table, and like you can see I have a brand new, fresh, white, unsullied backdrop for my videos now, which is something I set up in the previous episode of the Man Cave of Madness series. And so for today I thought we would just do a straight up sort of reviewing table video, a bit focused on movies rather than books. And I thought we would start with one of these odd finds which I got at a local secondhand shop. And this is a pair of vintage Super 8 movies. These are animated films for Donald Duck, and these are Swedish pressings. And what I found interesting about this, for one thing, they were really cheap. I think I paid maybe €3 per movie. And in Sweden, we have this weird thing on television where every Christmas they show the same sort of Donald Duck cartoon on the national television. So this is a very big part of sort of Swedish legacy and tradition, I suppose. And so I thought it really interesting and particularly funny that one of these reels is actually called In Santa's Workshop. Now, I'm not entirely sure what this is originally called, but it's like this very sort of classic animation from Santa's Workshop, and this is something that plays every Christmas here in Sweden. It's sort of like a holy moment for Swedes just to sit down every Christmas. It comes on at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, so all the time, every year, I kid you not, this is being played. But what's interesting is that as a people, we become more aware of like racism and stereotypes and things that, you know, were done in the old days, which might not really fly in today's media. And so some years back, some of the stuff in this sort of animation was cut. Like there's this sort of racial stereotypes about, some doll in the workshop or whatever, which looks like overly stereotypical as far as being like African American or something. I forget exactly what was cut because there's just a whole lot of things over the years. But so it was funny to find this, and I'm interested to see if this essentially has the full uncut or unedited version of the sequence, especially since it was dubbed with a Swedish title. I mean, I doubt this has Swedish audio, but I honestly don't know. It might have, so that would actually be really interesting. So this was the first find, really cheap, and I got this at one of the local secondhand shops. And next up, I thought we would look at some online finds, and I've actually taken quite an interest in the movie Blade Runner as of late. So I'm going to bring in 3 items for this. And first up, we have an American tape, which is something I found on Swedish eBay, surprisingly. And this is the 10th anniversary edition of the movie. It just comes in the regular sort of cardboard slip box, and I know this isn't like super collectible or anything, but I didn't own this and thought it was a nice addition to the collection. And as far as Blade Runner goes, this is a movie which honestly I didn't really start to appreciate until a few years ago. I always thought that this was a bit slow. I sort of watched this when I was younger and I didn't really get it. But as recently, I actually started listening to a really great podcast, which is called Shoulder of Orion, the Blade Runner podcast. And you can find this on like wherever you get your podcasts. And it's from a group of friends who also started Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast, which is also a podcast I really enjoy. And I think these are great examples of podcasts that just make you appreciate movies more. Like, I started listening to this primarily because I wanted to listen to something about Alien, and I just did a quick search for like Alien podcasts, whatever. And since then, I've just been binging it. So in any case, this was the first pickup. I forget what I paid. I think it was maybe like, I don't know, not more than €10. So pretty cheap tape. And next up is something really peculiar. This is a bootleg DVD of something known as Blade Runner, the White Dragon Cut. And if you know anything about Blade Runner and fan edits, you might already have heard about this. Now, this release is not particularly high quality, I gotta say, and this is also on DVD. So this is an earlier variation of this fan edit, and it's produced by a guy, I think it's Japanese, and can just go in for a bit of a close-up here. So yeah, this cover isn't the best. It's printed on like cheap quality paper, and I think the disc is even like, you know, just this, doesn't even have artwork on it. But I saw this for a listing on Swedish eBay, and this is a release or a fan edit which I've actually downloaded and watched on my computer, and I thought it was really interesting. It's not perfect, but it's an interesting edit for sure. So if you want to know more about this, you can just search for Blade Runner, the White Dragon cut, and there's essentially a bunch of making up clips and sort of trailers and stuff on YouTube, which is where you'll find this guy. Now, as far as buying this old DVD, I don't think you can anymore, but the movie is available on Blu-ray. This is obviously a fan-made bootleg, nothing official. And I don't know, I think the bootleg was just a bit too high priced in terms of the Blu-ray, so I'm not going to be getting that. But I did actually find a download of that to watch the movie, which I highly recommend. So in case you want to dig into some really deep cuts for Blade Runner, this is definitely a recommended, interesting view. Even though it's not perfect, it is a fascinating watch. So next up, we got the first official rental version of Blade Runner in Sweden. So this is the Warner rental cassette, which I picked up recently, and it's actually in pretty good shape, I gotta say. So I was really stoked about this because it is a release I've been wanting for quite a while. I did pay quite a lot for this. I think it landed at something close to 100 euro. Now, whether or not it's worth that, you know, that's debatable, but I have honestly not seen this for sale in a very long time. And like I said, this is in quite good shape. There's not a whole lot of stickers on the insert. Colors are pretty good. So yeah, I was stoked to find this because I'm finding that Blade Runner is becoming more and more of a film which I quite enjoy. I honestly think that Blade Runner 2049 is a better movie than the original, but that is just because I think the story has a lot more depth to it. And, you know, as much as I appreciate the original for what it created and the universe and the feel and everything and all that, I do think that Blade Runner 2049 is a more watchable and interesting film in terms of the story and the effects. And I do have some issues with the original, to be honest, whereas with the sequel, I don't. I think the sequel is perfect. So by that, I guess I am actually a 2049 guy, even though this is a very great classic sci-fi movie. So that was that. So we got a few Blade Runner items here. I'm just gonna stack these up for now. And next up, we are gonna see what we have. Oh, I can actually bring in the biggest item of today, which is also one of the more surprising finds, because this came from Swedish eBay, and it's something I had honestly never seen before, and it's called the Rob Zombie In the Box. In the Box is apparently some sort of series, and it's sort of like a modern day Jack in the Box, which, you know, to my surprise, I think I got it for like 15 euro maybe. And looking online on eBay, these can go for quite more than this. They are commonly broken, don't tend to work. And I was quite surprised because when I got this, I realized that this is actually still sealed. It still has the original seal on it, or at least a piece of tape. And, you know, I will agree that there is some fading on the plastic, so that's a bit of a shame. But generally, it looks like it's actually never been opened. So, I mean, it could be real sealed, could be sort of taped again, but it looks to be all in there. And to my even greater surprise, the music box actually still works. So I can actually push this, and you actually get a bit of a sort of low quality playback of Rob Zombie's classic Dragula track, which I love. I'm just a super big fan of Rob Zombie, and I would say that he's probably my all-time favorite artist. So when I saw this, I thought it was really cool to get, and it's gonna be sort of hard to pick up on this because, yeah, the see-through of the plastic here isn't the best, But I might do an unboxing on this if people want to know and see more about it. But I'm not going to do that in this video. So it's essentially like a Jack-in-the-Box. You can see here, there's like this rubberized version of Rob Zombie that sort of pops out of the box as you push the button. You know, you have to sort of, you know, work it in there, and then, like, you know, classic Jack-in-the-Box. And so there are essentially a few different in the series. You got like an Alice Cooper one, Ozzy Osbourne, then Rob Zombie. And yeah, just a very sort of bizarre item, which I, for one, am really happy to get a hold of. So that was a fun surprise that it was in such good shape as it is. But it's actually quite big, so we are gonna fit this in frame. I might move it to the side for now, and we'll just see what we got next. So now I'm actually gonna show you a gift. This comes from my buddy Fred, aka Schmollywood Babylon, and it is a DVD copy of a movie which is called 84 Charlie Mopic. And it's quite an odd movie. It's a bit of a mockumentary, from what I remember, and just a very sort of odd blend of realism and, like, you know, war footage. And I don't know, you can just Google for 84 Charlie Mopic and you'll find some info about this. I'm not entirely sure as to the history of this release, but it is sealed. Actually comes with a slipcase, which is pretty cool. And pretty sure this is a Thai DVD. It looks like a Thai DVD. Yeah, it has Thai subtitles. So I didn't even know about this release. And, you know, I think I have other versions of this movie. But yeah, this was a free gift, so very cool by Fred to give me this. So big thank you for that. And now we're just gonna move some stuff around here to give you a bit more of a display space. And now we have two more items. So the first one I want to bring in is a Swedish rental copy of Terror on Elm Street, or Nightmare on Elm Street, that it's originally called, but here in Sweden it's actually called Terror on Elm Street. So this is Terror on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, and this tape is not in very good shape. You can see that the insert is quite torn on the back. I was hoping I might replace the insert, but generally I just saw this, and generally, you know, I'm saying generally a lot, you know, generally these tend to go for quite a bit of money. I think people are just, you know, overly interested in the cover art. And honestly, I'm not ever been like a super huge fan of the series. I don't even actually watch all the movies in the franchise. But I always appreciated the cover art, and you know, I might sit down to actually watch, just, you know, binging the entire saga someday. But yeah, I picked this up. I forget what I paid. I think it actually came to something like 10 or 15 euro, which might be an overprice. But like I said, people tend to go really crazy for this particular series, and it's quite unusual to see it for sale, actually, specifically these rental releases. So yeah, I probably wouldn't have paid this much for it in general, but, you know, I was bidding on it, and just, you know, I just happened to buy it. It was one of those sort of, okay, apparently I got it. So that's just kind of stuff that happens sometimes. So in any case, let's see where we are at. Yeah, there is one more thing which I want to show you, and this is also something I was really stoked about, because I'm quite a big fan of old Nintendo 8-bit games. And in Sweden we had these rental boxes for the NES games. And these rental boxes are quite rare today, and they tend to look like regular sort of VHS style clamshells, but they're a bit differently designed so they can hold the NES cassettes in them, or the cartridges. And I found a listing for just a box, and the game in question is called Probotector. And if you've never heard of this game, and particularly if you are an American, I would not be surprised, because this is actually a European exclusive version of the game you know as Contra. So actually in Sweden, and I'm not sure how popular or like how big of a deal this was in Europe, So I'm not really sure if all the European countries got this sort of censored version of Contra, but we did here in Sweden. So instead of having the classic sort of army guys, you have these two rather cool looking robots running around. So it's pretty much exactly the same game, but instead of army guys, you have a couple of robots running around. So I always thought this was a really cool artwork. And when I saw the cartridge, or like the case for this, which is a rental case, I was really ecstatic because this just has the same graphics, but they're a bit larger. And it also has some sort of classic Swedish taglines, which says like robot attack from outer space, which I thought was really cool. And just flipping this over, you can see some of the screenshots in case we can pick up on this. Sorry if the lighting isn't the best, but yeah. So this is essentially the cover art. And, you know, even though I try to collect these rental boxes if I find some cool ones, this is the first time I've ever seen a rental box for Probotector. You know, obviously it's not like they don't exist. I mean, I know they exist. Most games got rental boxes, but I've never seen a copy for this one. So I was really stoked about this. And here we have a little sort of manual, which is just taped to the inside of the box. So this was pretty common. And then you have obviously a completely different design to your regular VHS clamshell, and this is to be able to hold the games in place. And usually these little sort of pegs here tend to break off, but this, not really sure if this is complete, but yeah, you put that there, close the case, and then it's actually locked in place. So yeah, this was a really cool find, and I did have the game from before, and with that, just really cool to complete this and actually have this as a display piece on my shelf. But yeah, that is actually it for all of the items of today. So as far as payment or how much I actually got charged for this, I can honestly not remember. I might have overpaid, but I think it was something like 30-40 euro thereabouts, and that's usually what you're gonna end up paying for just the box. Even, you know, when it's a cool game like this, they can be quite expensive. So I was really happy about this because, like I said, it is actually quite the rarity. But yeah, that is pretty much it. And I know that nothing is gonna fit in frame today. Gonna have to move the entire setup to actually do that. But yeah, so we got the Rob Zombie box, we got the Blade Runner tapes, we got Nightmare on Elm Street #5, got the NES game here, and yeah, I mean, it's a really cool lot. Oh yeah, got the Blade Runner and the Blade Runner White Dragon cut there at the end. So I just think this was a really cool lot. I was really happy about it. So I really hope you enjoyed this as well. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So I want to say thank you very much for watching. Okay, gotta do some alignment going on here. All right, there you go. This looks terrible, sorry. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. And as usual, hope to see you all next time. There we go, that's straight enough.